I thought I buried my past 10 years ago, until the night a stranger followed me home, calling me by the name only one person alive should know. And when I saw his face, I realized the past I tried to erase wasn't just coming back. It was coming for me. Leona Fairfax stood in the soft glow of her apartment's single lamp, staring at the neatly stacked piles of documents spread across her dining table. Her slender fingers traced the edges of the papers, every sheet a reminder of how far she had come on her own. Contracts, invoices, rent receipts, all of it proof of a life she had built without her family's help. A life that had cost her years of sacrifice and more nights than she could count spent working 2 jobs just to stay afloat. Her reflection glimmered faintly in the window pane, the city lights painting shadows across her tired but determined face. 30 years old, yet she often felt decades older. Success had not come easily, nor had freedom. But in her independence, she had found dignity, a dignity no one, not even her family, could take away from her. Her phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with her mother's name, Victoria Fairfax. Leona hesitated, letting it ring. That name still carried weight, though not warmth. Victoria was a woman of status, known for her sharp tongue and even sharper expectations. For years, she had looked at Leona not as a daughter but as a disappointment, an imperfect reflection of herself. The buzzing stopped, only to begin again moments later. This time, Leona answered. Leona, her mother's clipped voice rang through the line, leaving no room for affection. Your brother's engagement party is tomorrow evening. I expect you to be there. Don't embarrass the family with excuses. Leona's lips curved in a bitter smile. Her brother, Brandon Fairfax, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Every resource, every ounce of their parents' pride had been poured into him, while she was left to claw her way up from nothing. I'll be there, Leona replied, her tone neutral. Good, her mother said, then hung up without another word. Leona placed the phone down and leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. She knew tomorrow would not be a celebration for her. It would be another reminder of how she was considered an outsider in her own bloodline. Still, she would go. Not for them, but for herself. To show that despite everything, she was no longer the silent, overlooked girl they had dismissed. The next evening, the Fairfax estate glittered like a palace. Chandeliers blazed with light, crystal glasses clinked, and the hum of polite laughter filled the grand hall. The air reeked of wealth and superiority, a world Leona had long since abandoned. She stepped inside wearing a sleek black dress, simple yet commanding. Heads turned, not because she was flaunting diamonds or silk, but because she carried herself with a quiet power that needed no embellishment. Brandon, tall and smug, stood at the center of attention. His fiancée, a delicate woman named Celeste Harwood, clung to his arm with a practiced smile. Leona caught his eye across the room, and for the briefest second, his expression faltered. There was something almost uneasy in the way he looked at her, as though he had expected her absence, and her presence disrupted something carefully planned. Their mother swept toward Leona, her voice low and sharp. You're late. Try not to make a scene. I wouldn't dream of it, Leona said, her tone steady. But as she moved through the crowd, she couldn't shake the sense that beneath the laughter and congratulations, secrets lingered in the air. Secrets that, sooner or later, would come crashing down. And in that moment, she realized something she hadn't expected. Tonight was not just about Brandon's engagement. Tonight was the beginning of something far larger, something that would draw her into a storm she couldn't yet see. The murmur of polite conversation swirled around Leona as she drifted through the crowded ballroom. Waiters glided past with trays of champagne, laughter bubbled from clusters of elegantly dressed guests, and the music of a string quartet floated in the background. To anyone else, the evening might have seemed flawless. To Leona, it felt suffocating. She stopped near the edge of the room, her sharp eyes scanning the glittering crowd. Her family had always thrived on appearances, on presenting the illusion of perfection. But she had lived behind that curtain, and she knew how thin the fabric really was. Leona. She turned to find Brandon striding toward her, his smile tight. Even now, with his fiancée on his arm, he carried himself with the smug assurance of someone convinced the world revolved around him. "You came," he said, as if her presence were an inconvenience. "Of course," she replied smoothly. "Wouldn't want to miss the celebration of the century." His jaw tightened at the sarcasm. "Mother was worried you'd embarrass us." Leona arched an eyebrow. "Tell her not to lose sleep. I wouldn't dream of stealing your spotlight." For a moment, his composure cracked. His eyes narrowed, studying her like a rival rather than a sister. Then he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Stay out of the way tonight, Leona. Some things are better left untouched." Before she could respond, he straightened, plastered a charming smile back onto his face, and returned to Celeste's side. Leona's pulse quickened. What did he mean? What was he hiding? She was about to retreat to the quiet of the balcony when she felt a hand on her arm. Her father, Richard Fairfax, stood there. Unlike Victoria, Richard had always kept his distance, neither cruel nor kind, but detached, as though parenting had been left to his wife. "You shouldn't bait him," Richard said softly. Leona searched for his expression. "And why not? He's had everything handed to him, while I was treated like I didn't exist." Richard's gaze shifted away, guilt flickering for a moment before vanishing. "This isn't the time. There are arrangements in motion. Just keep your head down." Her chest tightened. Arrangements. Secrets. Always whispers, always shadows. She was so tired of it. As the evening wore on, she caught fragments of hushed conversations, glances exchanged when they thought she wasn't looking. Brandon, slipping away to take a call in the corner. Her mother, pulling Celeste aside with an intensity that looked more like strategy than affection. When Leona finally stepped out onto the balcony, the cool night air hit her lungs like a relief. The city stretched before her in glittering lights, but her thoughts were storming. She had come here expecting only disdain and dismissal. Instead, she found herself at the edge of something deeper, something dangerous. Her brother's warning echoed in her ears. Some things are better left untouched. But Leona Fairfax had spent her whole life being ignored, overlooked, pushed aside. If truths were hiding in the shadows of her family's empire, she would not turn away. Not this time. And as she stood beneath the cold stars, she felt it in her bones. Whatever secret lay buried here was not just Brandon's. It was tied to her as well, woven into the very fabric of the life she thought she had left behind. The balcony door creaked open behind her. Leona turned, half expecting her mother's icy presence. Instead, it was Celeste, Brandon's fiancée, her expression strained under the polished mask she wore in the ballroom. "Oh, Leona," Celeste said softly, as if relieved it wasn't someone else. "I just needed some air." Leona studied her carefully. Celeste had always struck her as delicate, almost too fragile for the ruthless world of the Fairfaxes. But tonight, there was something in her eyes, fear, perhaps, that seemed out of place for a bride-to-be basking in her engagement. "Are you happy?" Leona asked before she could stop herself. Celeste froze. For a moment, her mask slipped. "Of course," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. She gripped the balcony railing, knuckles white. "Brandon is everything my family wanted for me." Leona's instincts sharpened. This wasn't love. This was an arrangement. Before she could press further, the sound of raised voices from inside drew both their attention. Leona stepped back through the doors and found herself at the edge of a tense exchange. Her mother, Victoria, stood close to Brandon, her voice harsh but controlled. "You should have dealt with it already. If she finds out, everything collapses." Brandon hissed under his breath, his back to Leona. "I told you I'm handling it. She won't be a problem." Leona's heart pounded. She knew, without needing to hear a name, that they were talking about her. Forcing her breath steady, she retreated a step before either of them noticed her presence. The words cut into her like a blade. If she finds out, everything collapses. Her mind whirled. What could they possibly be hiding? And why did it threaten them so much if she discovered it? Later that evening, as the guests prepared to leave, Leona noticed Brandon slip away again. This time, she followed. Her heels clicked quietly against the marble as she kept her distance. Brandon moved swiftly through a side hallway, pulling out his phone. "Yes," he muttered into it, voice sharp. "We'll move the funds by Monday. No delays. I don't care what it takes. Just make sure it can't be traced back." Leona froze. Funds? No delays? Her chest tightened. Was Brandon involved in something illegal? Something that could not only ruin the family's name, but also destroy everything they claimed to protect. Before she could gather herself, Brandon turned abruptly, his eyes narrowing. For a split second, they locked gazes. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, suspicion blazing in his tone. Leona steadied herself, forcing a calm smile. "Looking for the restroom." Brandon studied her for a long moment, then gave a tight, dangerous smile. "Careful, sister. Curiosity is a dangerous habit, especially in this family." He brushed past her, leaving a faint chill in his wake. Leona's heart hammered as she walked away. One thing was certain. Whatever secret Brandon and their mother were guarding, it was larger than she had imagined. And now, she was no longer just the overlooked daughter. She was a threat. Leona didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as fragments of the evening replayed in her mind. The coldness of her mother's words, the unease in Celeste's eyes, Brandon's whispered phone call. Every detail seemed to grow sharper in the quiet darkness until she could no longer ignore the truth clawing at her. Her family was hiding something dangerous. By morning, her resolve had hardened. She had spent her whole life being silenced, dismissed, and told she wasn't enough. But now she had stumbled onto a crack in the polished surface of the Fairfax empire, and she wasn't going to look away. Her first stop was her office downtown. Unlike the Fairfax estate with its marble staircases and gold chandeliers, her world was built of steel, glass, and grit. A modest consulting business, just 3 employees besides herself, but it was hers. Every inch of it earned with sweat and stubbornness. She powered up her computer and pulled up financial databases, public filings, and company records. The Fairfaxes prided themselves on their vast investments, but Leona knew most people only saw what they were allowed to. She, however, had learned to look beneath the surface. Hours passed. Coffee cooled beside her as she traced unfamiliar shell companies and transfers tucked away in the fine print. And then she found it. A series of large, unexplained transactions. Millions of dollars moved through offshore accounts, routed between dummy corporations. Some of the records bore Brandon's digital signature. Her breath caught. This wasn't just shady accounting. This was laundering. And if Brandon was involved, Victoria surely knew. "Damn it," Leona whispered, leaning back in her chair. The weight of it pressed against her chest. If this ever came to light, the Fairfax name would shatter. She barely had time to process when a knock startled her. The glass door of her office opened, and in stepped Damien Cole, a financial investigator she'd met years ago on a freelance project. Dark-haired, sharp-eyed, he carried an easy confidence that always seemed to unsettle her. "Leona Fairfax," he said with a crooked smile, "I heard you've been asking questions that make powerful people nervous." Her pulse spiked.
"Who told you that?"
"Let's just say," he replied, taking a seat across from her, "word travels fast in my line of work. And when I hear your brother's name tied to funds that don't exist on paper, I get curious." Leona's stomach tightened. She hadn't told anyone about her findings, which meant Damien was already circling the same storm. "You should walk away," she said, though even as the words left her lips, she knew she didn't believe them. He leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Do you want to walk away?" Silence hung between them. For the first time in years, Leona felt the spark of something unexpected. Fear, yes, but also the dangerous pull of trust. Damien was in trouble, but he might be the only person who could help her uncover the truth. Leona drew in a slow breath.
"No.
I don't want to walk away." Damien's smile faded, replaced by something sharper. "Then you'd better be ready, Leona. Because once you start digging into people like your brother, you don't just find dirt. You find graves. A chill slid down her spine. She had thought she was only chasing answers. But now she realized she was stepping into a war. And there was no turning back. Leona's office felt smaller with Damien inside it. He had rolled up his sleeves, leaned over her desk, and was scrolling through the documents she had uncovered. His brow furrowed, the glow of the screen reflecting off his sharp features. "This isn't just laundering," he murmured. "This is deliberate layering. They're moving funds through 5, maybe 6 shell companies. Look here, Luxon Holdings, registered in the Caymans. It doesn't exist outside of these records. Someone created it as a funnel." Leona folded her arms tightly. "And Brandon's signature is on half of these." Damien looked up at her, eyes narrowing. "You realize what this means, right? Your brother isn't just careless with money. He's committing international fraud. If it's exposed, it won't just ruin the family's reputation. People will go to prison." Her chest constricted. A part of her wanted to feel vindicated, that the golden boy wasn't as perfect as everyone believed. But another part of her, buried deep, ached with dread. Brandon was still her brother. And if the truth surfaced, the Fairfaxes would turn on her with a fury she might not survive. Damien must have read her hesitation. "You don't owe them loyalty, Leona. They left you to fend for yourself, while they built their empire on shadows. You have the power to bring it all down." His words stirred something inside her, a mix of defiance and fear. She turned away from the desk, moving to the window. "What if I'm wrong? What if there's an explanation I'm not seeing?" Damien's voice softened. "Then we prove it. Together." The word hung between them.
Together.
For the first time in years, she didn't feel entirely alone. The weight of the Fairfax legacy wasn't solely on her shoulders anymore. Someone was willing to share it, even if it was dangerous. But that fragile sense of connection was shattered when her phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. "Stop digging, Leona. Last warning." Her breath caught. She showed Damien, whose expression darkened immediately. "They're watching you," he said flatly. "They know you've started pulling threads. That means we don't have much time." Leona's fingers trembled slightly as she locked the phone. Her family's reach had always felt suffocating, but now it was terrifying. They weren't just aware of her. They were prepared to silence her. She tried to steady her voice. "If they think threats will scare me, they've forgotten who I am." Damien gave a wry smile. "That's what worries me. People like your brother, they don't bluff." As evening fell, Damien insisted on walking her back to her apartment. The city was alive with neon and noise, but Leona couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed heavier, every corner a little too quiet. When they reached her door, she lingered instead of stepping inside. "Why are you helping me, Damien? You could walk away." He studied her for a long moment, his eyes intense. "Because I've seen too many people like your family get away with everything. And because..." He stopped, his jaw tightening as if the words caught in his throat. "Because you remind me of someone I couldn't save." The honesty in his voice startled her. For a heartbeat, the danger around them faded, and all she could feel was the fragile pull of connection between them. But then a sound broke the silence, a car engine idling down the street, headlights sweeping across the pavement, pausing just a little too long on them before sliding away. Leona's stomach sank. This wasn't paranoia. They were being watched. And the Fairfaxes weren't going to sit idly by. The days that followed blurred together, an endless rhythm of rain-slick pavements, buzzing phones, and deadlines that kept Leona's mind occupied. Yet beneath her polished composure, a storm brewed. Elias's reappearance had shaken her carefully constructed walls, exposing vulnerabilities she thought long buried. On the evening of a board presentation, Leona left the office later than usual. The city was alive with its usual chaos, headlights painting streaks of light against the wet streets, neon signs flickering like false promises. She wrapped her coat tighter, heels tapping steadily against the sidewalk, when she sensed it, the unmistakable feeling of being followed. At first, she brushed it off as paranoia, but when she glanced at a shop window's reflection, her stomach tightened. A figure lingered behind, keeping just enough distance to blend with the crowd. Leona's pulse quickened. She adjusted her pace, weaving through people, testing if the shadow would mimic her movements.
It did.
Her breath caught. She ducked into a side alley leading toward a well-lit boulevard, pretending confidence, though fear gnawed at her insides. By the time she reached the corner cafe where she often met clients, the figure had vanished, like smoke dissolving into the night air. Inside, Leona gripped her phone tightly, knuckles pale. A message buzzed across the screen, the sender unknown. You can't hide from the past, Leona. Some debts are never erased. Her chest constricted. The words blurred as old memories crashed back. Secrets she had locked away, choices she had never spoken of, mistakes no one could ever know. But how did someone else know? The next morning, Elias appeared at her office again. This time, he didn't wait for permission before stepping inside. His eyes immediately caught the tension in her stance, the dark circles under her eyes. You've seen it too, haven't you? His voice was low, urgent. Leona froze. Seen what? The signs, Elias pressed. The same messages. The same shadows. Someone's digging, and they're using your past against you. And if they've found you, he trailed off, leaving the weight of his silence to fill the room. Leona's heart hammered. What do you know about this? More than I should, Elias admitted. His jaw tightened, torn between confession and restraint. But if you want to survive this, you'll have to trust me. Her instinct screamed, not to. Elias was the wound she never let heal, the man who'd once promised forever and delivered betrayal. Yet in his eyes, she saw something undeniable, fear. Not for himself, but for her. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed again. Another message. The truth will destroy you. Unless I get what I want. Elias leaned closer, his voice nearly a whisper. It's starting. And you're not ready for what's coming. The words sliced through her, cold and merciless. Whatever game this was, it was no longer about bruised hearts or missed chances. It was darker, more dangerous. And Leona Fairfax realized with chilling clarity, her life was no longer her own. The air inside Leona's apartment felt heavier than usual, as though the walls themselves carried secrets she wasn't meant to remember. She locked the door behind her, checked it twice, and pressed her back against the wood, her breath trembling out in uneven gasps. The message glowed from her phone screen, each word burning into her mind. The truth will destroy you. Unless I get what I want. Her fingers hovered over the delete button, but she couldn't bring herself to erase it. It was proof that the shadows weren't just in her imagination. Proof that someone, somewhere, had been watching her for longer than she wanted to admit. And the worst part? She already knew there was truth worth destroying her for. A soft knock on the door snapped her upright. She grabbed the nearest object, a glass paperweight, and moved silently across the living room. Leona, came Elias's voice, muffled but steady. It's me. Open up. She hesitated. Everything about this screamed danger, but instinct overpowered logic. She cracked the door open just enough to see him standing there, rain dripping from his coat, eyes restless. Please, he said softly. I wouldn't come if it wasn't urgent. Reluctantly, she let him in. Elias didn't waste time. He strode to her window, pulling the curtains shut before speaking. They won't stop, Leona. Whoever sent that message, they know what you've tried to bury. His gaze flickered to hers, searching, almost accusing. And if you don't tell me the truth, I can't protect you. Her grip tightened around the paperweight, though she slowly lowered it to the table. Protect me? Her laugh was sharp, bitter. You don't get to use that word. Not after what you did. Elias flinched. I know I failed you. I know I broke everything we had. But this is bigger than us. Leona's heart pounded, torn between fury and a raw ache that had never faded. She turned away, staring at the city lights that flickered like dying stars beyond the glass. I made choices, Elias, she whispered. Choices I thought would stay buried forever. If they come out, her voice cracked. It won't just be me they destroy. It will be everyone around me. Before Elias could respond, her phone buzzed again. This time, the message included an address. Meet me tomorrow. Midnight. Come alone. No threats, no explanations, just an order. Leona stared at the glowing screen, her mind spinning. She felt Elias step closer, his presence warming the cold air between them. You can't go, he said firmly. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. You have me. The words lingered, heavy with both promise and regret. For a moment, she let herself imagine what it would be like to trust him again, to fall back into the arms she once believed were safe. But then she remembered the betrayal, the night he walked away without looking back, and the illusion shattered. Still, the reality was undeniable. Leona was walking into a storm, and Elias was the only one who seemed to understand just how dangerous it was. And deep inside, she couldn't silence the terrifying thought. What if the one pulling the strings wasn't a stranger at all? The city was a restless creature at midnight, its veins glowing with red taillights and neon signs that buzzed like broken prayers. Leona stood on the curb, clutching her coat tighter, staring at the address on her phone one last time before slipping it into her pocket. A warehouse on the outskirts of town. Remote. Empty. The perfect place for secrets to bleed into the dark. She told no one she was leaving, not even Elias. Especially not Elias. His words had replayed in her head all evening. You can't go. You have me. A promise, but also a trap. If she let him get too close, he would demand answers she wasn't ready to give. The cab dropped her off at a dimly lit street. The warehouse loomed ahead, its rusted frame rising like a skeleton against the night sky. Broken windows gaped like hollow eyes, and the faint smell of salt and oil lingered in the air. Leona's heels clicked softly against the pavement as she approached. Each step was measured, deliberate, though her heart pounded violently beneath her ribs. She pushed the heavy door open, its hinges screaming, and stepped inside. Silence.
Dust.
Shadows. Then a voice. Low, distorted. You came. Leona spun toward the sound. A figure stood in the shadows, face obscured by the hood of a dark jacket. I don't play games, she said sharply, masking her fear with defiance. What do you want from me? The figure laughed, slow and deliberate, sending a chill crawling down her spine. Not money, not fame. I want the truth you buried, the one that could ruin you. Leona's throat tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. The hooded figure stepped closer, into a streak of pale moonlight seeping through the broken roof. His voice dropped, sharp as a blade. Don't lie. I know what happened 10 years ago. I know who you hurt, and I know who you betrayed to climb to where you are now. Leona staggered back, her chest heaving. Memories crashed in, nightmares she had smothered for years. Faces. Choices. A secret so dangerous it had the power to rip apart everything she had built. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't dare look at it, but she knew who it was, Elias. Somehow, someway, he always knew when she was about to fall. The figure tilted his head, watching her struggle. You thought you could bury the past, Leona Fairfax. But the past doesn't die. It waits. And with that, he tossed a small envelope at her feet. The flap hung open, revealing photographs inside, evidence. Proof. Her blood ran cold. She bent to pick them up, hands trembling, when the warehouse door slammed open behind her. Leona whipped around. Her breath caught. It was Elias. His eyes locked on hers, then darted to the hooded figure. Rage, recognition, and something unspoken flickered across his face. Leona, he said, his voice fierce. Step away from him. Her world spun. Him. Elias knew the man in the shadows. The figure let out a dark chuckle. Of course he'd come. He's part of this, Leona. He always was. Her pulse thundered, her vision swam, and for the first time, she couldn't tell which was worse. The enemy in front of her, or the man she had just let back into her life. The warehouse seemed to shrink around them, air heavy with the stench of rust and betrayal. Leona's chest rose and fell in sharp bursts as her gaze darted between the hooded figure and Elias. Part of this? Her voice cracked, trembling with disbelief. Elias, tell me he's lying. Elias's jaw clenched, eyes dark with something she couldn't name. Leona, I never wanted you to find out this way. Her knees nearly gave out. Find out what? The hooded man threw back his hood. The face beneath was older, marked with lines of bitterness, but familiar, horrifyingly familiar. Caleb, Leona whispered, her blood running cold. Her half-brother. The one who had vanished a decade ago under a cloud of scandal and whispers, leaving her family fractured and broken. The one she thought was long gone from her life. You destroyed me, Caleb spat, his eyes gleaming with venom. You stood in that courtroom, silent, while I took the fall. You let them believe I was guilty, so you could walk away clean. The photographs in her trembling hands, evidence from that night, suddenly made sense. The broken friendships, the whispered lies, the secret she buried with the help of those who wanted her future untarnished. I was a child, Leona said, her voice shaking. I didn't know how to fight them. I didn't know how to save you. You didn't want to save me, Caleb roared, stepping closer. You wanted your perfect life, your shiny reputation. You sacrificed me for it. And now, sister, I'm here to collect what you owe. Leona stumbled back, tears burning her eyes. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She looked at Elias, pleading, desperate. Tell me you weren't part of this, she whispered. Elias's face twisted with anguish. I tried to stop him, Leona. I found him years ago, consumed by revenge. I thought if I stayed close, I could control him, keep him from destroying you. That's why I left you. I thought distance would protect you. The confession hit her like a physical blow. All the years of heartbreak, of believing he abandoned her, reduced to this unbearable truth. He left because he thought he was saving her. But Caleb wasn't finished. His hand slid into his jacket, pulling out a pistol. The metallic click echoed like a death knell. Tonight, Leona, Caleb sneered, you pay. Either you confess publicly and lose everything, or I end it here. Leona's breath caught. Her body trembled, but her voice steadied, rising from somewhere deep, somewhere fierce. No, she said, eyes locking onto her brother's. You don't get to define me anymore. You don't get to own me. Caleb's finger twitched on the trigger. Elias moved instantly, stepping between them. If you want to hurt her, he growled, you'll go through me first. Time fractured. A single heartbeat stretched into eternity. The gun fired. The echo rattled the warehouse walls. Leona screamed, dropping to her knees as Elias collapsed, blood blooming across his shirt. Caleb staggered back, shock flashing in his eyes, before disappearing into the shadows, his footsteps retreating into the night. Leona pressed her hands desperately against Elias's wound, sobbing. Stay with me. Please, Elias. You can't leave me again. His hand lifted, trembling, brushing a tear from her cheek. I never stopped loving you, he whispered, voice fading. Even when I stayed away. Tears blurred her vision. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Whether someone had called them or fate had intervened, she didn't know. All she knew was that the man who had broken her heart had just sacrificed everything to save it. And as Elias's eyes fluttered shut, the truth struck her with merciless clarity. The past wasn't done with her. Caleb was still out there. The war for her future had only just begun.